Welcome to the Com Analytics channel. I'm Boris Tizengauzen. Today is October 2nd, and there's a lot of news. In this episode, no longer just a gas station. Russia will be buying gasoline from China due to strikes on its oil refineries. French special forces seize a tanker from Russia's shadow fleet. Reparations on pause. Who in the European Union doesn't want Ukraine to get Russian money? And Elon Musk is heading to Musk while Trump is passing intelligence to Ukraine. Here's a question. What's going on with the Tomahawks? Assad has been poisoned in Moscow and Orban threw a real tantrum. All this and more. There's a lot of interesting stuff in today's episode, so if you're new to this channel, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next ones. By the way, we're under an alert right now. Swamp creatures are attacking the region, so I'll be keeping an eye out to see if anything is headed our way. If I have to step away for a bit, I'll edit it together later. You won't even notice. The main thing is to grab Siegfried under my arm and dash to the shelter. So Russia will start buying gasoline from China after nearly 40% of its refinery capacity was shut down. Russian authorities are preparing to begin importing gasoline from China and from other Asian countries as well, by the way. They might also look to buy from South Korea or Singapore. Well, we do have contact with South Korea. So look, it's all benefits for China. In fact, in this situation, China could even supply us with drones through gray channels, right? So that we could completely finish off the Russian oil refining industry. China is simply winning here. It buys oil from Russia, refines it into gasoline, and then sells that gasoline back to Russia. And the oil is being bought at lower and lower prices. China is simply the main beneficiary. I'm seriously telling Russians Putin is a Chinese agent. After all, he wasn't joking when he said that some of his kids or grandkids are already speaking Chinese. So expect a new master from the east. That's exactly where he will come from. The governor of the Khabarovsk region called the fuel shortage in several districts unacceptable. He stated that the current situation is unacceptable and that residents of the municipalities should not have to suffer from a lack of fuel when there are 2 oil refineries operating in the region. But now, similar news is coming in from almost all over Russia. There's a shortage here, a shortage there. It should be clarified that for now, there are still 2 oil refineries operating in the region. But I think the Magyar birds will reach them too, and the new Minister of Energy in Russia will get to them. Well, that's fixable. For now, they're still operating. I think in Crimea, they've limited the amount of fuel sold to no more than 20 liters per person. Just a couple of days ago, they were selling 30 liters per person. Now it's 20. Guess what the next statement from that Gauleiter Aksionov will be? So overall, the situation is serious. And what happened, one would like to ask. Do you know what's interesting? That before, Russians could almost with impunity strike our energy infrastructure, hit our oil depots and our railway infrastructure. They're still doing it now, but now they're getting hit back over there. And blackout is already a word they're no longer laughing at. Remember how they wanted to leave us without electricity and heat in the winter? But now it's not going to be funny for them either, so... Look, at this point in time, if any Russian citizen just carefully rewinds and tries to piece together the complete chronology of events, they'll clearly see that exactly 2 years ago, absolutely nothing was flying over there. I'm not even talking about Moscow or further away. Nothing was flying there, but now everything keeps coming and coming. Yeah, and recently I came across a video of Elon Checherin, I call him that, Akloistin, because it was from September 30th, 2022, the moment when he was yelling Goida from the stage.
Существует такое древнерусское междометие Гойда, означающее призыв к немедленному действию. Как же нам не хватает сейчас таких боевых кличей? Гойда, братья и сестры, Гойда! Бойся, старый мир, лишенный истинной красоты, истинной веры, истинной мудрости, управляемой безумцами, извращенцами, сатанистами. Бойся, мы идем! Гойда! Гойда!
Isn't he just absolutely disgusting, right? What a truly vile, real devil he is. Well, I just want to ask, 3 years ago he was shouting Goida. Has Goida already arrived or not yet? So when is it? Ah, now there's action. After Goida comes the action. So it turns out there's this one old pensioner who's bored all the time. He wants some action, and for the sake of this action, he sacrificed over 1 million Russians. Well then. By the way, I recently came across a clip from propagandist Solovyov's talk show. He was totally out of it. I don't know if the episode was recent or not, but the crazed propagandist was telling how a bridgehead is being formed in the Odessa region for an attack on unrecognized Transnistria, of course, together with Moldova and Romania. So it's not for nothing we've already heard that we're supposedly preparing to go into unrecognized Transnistria, but he claimed that the force is being formed, among others, from Colombians, specifically the most notorious criminals, who are being taken straight from Colombian prisons and sent to the Odessa region, and they will supposedly form the main backbone. I wonder who writes their scripts. What kind of crazed mushroom is coming up with these scenarios for them? Colombians are supposedly being brought straight from prison here. I don't know, maybe like on galleys, or something like that. And then they scatter across the fields and line up in a triangle formation like a boar's head and are supposedly getting ready to attack unrecognized Transnistria. And the best part is you have Solovyov, Macron, and everyone else just nodding along. Yes, Colombians, of course, sure. By the way, do you know why they're doing this? It's to show Trump, like, look, they're training the drug cartel's army over there. But I think Trump would actually be happy if Colombians end up fighting against Russians, that's it. I think he would be happy. We need to think through the scenarios more carefully. By the way, friends, let me remind you, we have an important new fundraiser for 2 termite ground robotic complexes for the 101st Separate Brigade. Our defenders have recorded a traditional address for you. Please take a look.
We are soldiers of the 101st Security Brigade. We are reaching out to Boris Tizengauzen and his followers for help. We are very grateful to you for the drones you provided earlier. Today, we are in great need of 2 termite ground robotic complexes for the rapid and timely evacuation of the wounded from the battlefield, which, in the current situation, will help save their lives. Our units are fighting in the Konstantinovka direction and in Chasiv Yar. We will continue to destroy the enemy and believe in your support. Glory to Ukraine!
Let's help our warriors. In this case, it is a direct investment in saving the lives of our defenders. The link to donate is, as always, in the description of this video and also in the comments. There are options for Mono, Private, and PayPal for those who want to help from abroad. I want to say a huge thank you to you, as always. You are truly amazing. And together we are a real force. So let's keep helping our people. And if you don't see the payment details, the QR code right here also leads to the donation page. French special forces have seized a tanker from Russia's Shadow Fleet. It is suspected that this vessel may be connected to the launch of drones over Europe. They were launched between September 22nd and 25th when drones paralyzed the airport, including Copenhagen Airport. So take a look. This vessel is sailing under the flag of Benin. It departed from Primorsk, traveled through the Baltic Sea, and passed through Danish territorial waters. And after rounding the northwestern coast of France, it was accompanied by a French military ship. Now the tanker has been anchored and an investigation is underway. The crew refused to provide documents proving the vessel's ownership and are not following orders. 2 people introduced themselves as the captain and the first mate, but they're keeping silent and investigative actions are currently ongoing. The most interesting thing is that this vessel has changed both its name and its flag several times. As is typical for ships of Russia's Shadow Fleet, they turn off their transponders and so on. In other words, they're trading in sanctioned oil right under Europe's nose. But everyone just pretends that it's all fine. By the way, this is that very ship, Pushpa. Before that it was called Kivala, which I've already talked about. And this vessel is under sanctions from the European Union, the United Kingdom, Switzerland, Canada, and New Zealand. So it's your typical shady tanker with some kind of fake insurance and so on. But what's important here? That there is a precedent, it has been seized, and Macron, by the way, came out and said, see, we seized it, now it will sit at anchor for a week or 2. And the schedule will be disrupted, and in general, this is exactly how things should be done. But Macron asked to be careful with statements about whether they are involved or not. We'll find out everything soon enough. So the fact that tankers from Russia's Shadow Fleet randomly drop anchor where there are underwater communications and then those get damaged, Well, that hasn't taught anyone anything. No one has learned from it. One of the tankers even tore off its anchor, dragging the cable along the seabed. In other words, they turn off their transponders in places where they're not supposed to be. Let me also remind you that most of the tankers in Russia's shadow fleet are old rust buckets, loaded to the brim with oil. Do you really want those near your shores? If you wanted to, I even did an entire program on this topic. There's absolutely no problem tracking these tankers from the shadow fleet. Tighten the regulations for them, ban turning off transponders and so on, plus add extra inspections and their insurance costs will skyrocket. Plus, the insurance must definitely come from so-called white countries.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
That's it, and on top of that, there are several other methods to catch them easily. The key point is this is only if there's the will to do it. The leaders of the European Union were unable to approve a payment of 140 billion to Ukraine as reparations from Russia. The Financial Times reports this. In other words, they wanted to provide a loan of 140 billion, which would be secured by frozen Russian assets. But Belgium refused to support the initiative, and France and Luxembourg expressed concerns about the legal consequences. But why has France become so concerned about Russian assets lately? Macron himself personally said, "Don't do this, don't touch Russian money." Very strange, very... Well, with Belgium, it's clear they hold the main sum of Russian money in their depository, and not only that. Do you know what everyone is afraid of? Everyone knows perfectly well that the money is there, including that. And criminal money too, money from authoritarian regimes, dictators' money is kept in those depositories. All sorts of illegal operations and so on, money from banned substances, a whole lot of dirty money is stored there. So if they suddenly touch Russian money now, then all of this, all these unearned incomes, dictators, drug dealers, all sorts of criminals will move their money to other jurisdictions. That's all there is to it if they haven't already moved it. That's what they're afraid of. They're afraid to disturb the dishonest sleep, the sleep of dishonest people. Musk announced that he would move to live on Mars. Elon Musk wrote on social network X, "I have one passport now and forever. The USA, I will live and die here. Or on Mars." Part of America in parentheses, he wrote. At the same time, he didn't explain why he called Mars a part of the USA. It would be better the other way around. I mean, this planet is wonderful. I don't know what it's like on Mars. Let all the idiots go there. But really, why make it so expensive? Just do something with them so they never bother normal people again. Actually, I've started to feel a bit differently about Elon Musk. Lately, I've read about him, watched interviews, including one with his dad. And his dad, of course, is a real narcissist, the king of narcissists. So he looks disgusted when he's asked a question. Well, he really does recently. Elon Musk's net worth recently surpassed 500 billion. That's truly unique. And they ask Elon Musk's father, Elon Musk, a question. Are you proud of your son and his achievements? And do you know what he says? He says, well, back in my day, I was famous too. I also had friendships with some very important people. And here you are being asked about your son, to be proud of such a son. Well, sure, maybe he's a bit eccentric. Maybe he sometimes makes odd gestures or says crazy things about Crimea or Ukraine. But what you can't take away from him is that he achieved all of this on his own. In other words, he's self-made. I've come to see things differently because I understand that with a father like me, always me, constantly overshadowing him, with a father like that, it was hard for him to stay well adjusted. And let me just remind you, his father, his own stepdaughter, gave birth to his child. So that's a whole separate story in itself. And recently he visited Russia. Elon Musk, people like him, absolutely unscrupulous, seem to be appreciated there, in my opinion. Just helped out with some money. Whether someone's a murderer, a terrorist, it doesn't matter. I'll go for the money, show up at some Zagreb forum or something like that. I don't remember exactly. Well, anyway, yeah. Trump, here's one of the key news items. Trump confirmed statements about... Hold on a second. I'm keeping an eye on this, seeing where it's heading, and it's all flying off somewhere. Shade drones. Trump confirmed statements about a possible Ukrainian victory. He authorized sharing intelligence with Kiev for missile strikes on Russia's energy infrastructure. That's genuinely good news. The question is, it would be nice to provide not just intelligence, but also something to actually strike with. That would be a real super combo, but we'll get to that in a moment. So, for targeting airstrikes, attention on the energy infrastructure deep inside Russian territory. The Wall Street Journal is reporting on this. This decision became the first confirmation that Kiev can reclaim lost territories, writes the Wall Street Journal. Well, before this, let me remind you, Trump said that we have no maps, Zelensky has no maps, and that there was no need to start a war against someone bigger than you, and so on and so forth. Well, now things are starting to change a bit. And by the way, today Peskov came out and said, we know that the US is already providing this intelligence to Ukraine in real time. I want to emphasize, we're talking about energy infrastructure. This is important. And with what will they strike? That's the best question of all. Well, first of all, there are currently discussions that the US is considering the possibility of supplying Ukraine with Tomahawk and Barracuda cruise missiles, and also other surface-to-surface or surface-to-air missiles. But no final decision has been made yet, according to sources from the White House. So far, Moscow is reacting rather sluggishly to this information. Peskov says that we are watching closely. And before that, Peskov stated that what's important here is who will be programming these missiles, who will be launching them. That's what's going to matter. You see, they're not saying that this is a red line, that we'll just go to war immediately with Putin running around, flailing his heels in all directions, sniveling. No, they say, well, what's important is who will be programming them. So what? I guarantee you, no matter who it is, whether it's the US, our own specialists, or American intelligence data, so what? Is Russia going to go to war with the United States? That will never happen in a million years. You see, the thing is, Putin is in a unique situation. He's up against, well, to be precise, on the side of good, there are a lot of cowards, who are even bigger cowards than Putin. Pardon my French, that's how it turned out. So if it works out with the Tomahawks, that's a range of 1,600 kilometers, which obviously covers St. Petersburg and Kazan. Moscow, of course, and it almost reaches Yekaterinburg. Basically, it can reach everything it needs to. Ports, oil pipelines, gas pipelines, power stations, major refineries. In short, it will reach, but the main question is, obviously, Tomahawks are still a long way off. I think so, but the rhetoric has already changed significantly. The important question is, even if Ukraine gets them, what will it use? Tomahawks, what would Ukraine even use to launch these Tomahawks? They can be launched from ships and submarines, from certain aircraft, but unfortunately we don't have strategic bombers. And as for Tomahawks, there are recently developed ground-based launchers, but this technology is only used in the United States. They're called Typhon, these launchers. It's a mobile ground-based launcher consisting of 4 launchers, a command vehicle, and a reloading vehicle. In total, I think only 3 have been produced, 2 in the US and 1 in Germany, but the one in Germany doesn't have these launchers. So we understand that if we get them together with the launchers, that would be just perfect. The deposed president of Syria, Bashar al-Assad, was poisoned in Russia, according to Syrian media. According to them, Assad was discharged from a Moscow hospital a few days ago, and his condition is now stable. The source claims that those who wanted to poison him intended to disgrace the Russian government and accuse it of Assad's murder. Let me just remind you that right now, Assad poses the greatest threat specifically to Russia, not to anyone else, and not to Syria, which he fled from. By the way, Assad is just like Yanukovych. Putin can sit them down in front of him and play with them however he wants. These are his two... And a reminder that he is a complete failure in international politics. His 2 most notorious failures. 2 puppets who sit somewhere with him in the Moscow suburbs, and every time they remind him, you lost Syria, your puppet Yanukovych fled Ukraine, and so on. I think before long, someone like Lukashenko will join them too. So why does Assad pose a threat to Russia, and specifically to Putin and his inner circle? He knows a lot. He possesses information that is extremely sensitive for Putin. First of all, the role and operations of Wagner PMC and related organizations, what they did in Syria, how they did it, the channels for recruiting and hiring Syrians, financial transactions, the payments that formally they weren't Russian, but they were coordinated with the Kremlin. In other words, Assad knows a great deal. Assad also knows about the schemes for financing that bypass sanctions, the money flows, the transportation, and all those intermediary companies. He has information about arms deliveries to Syria, sensitive technologies, where the components came from, chemical weapons, who used them, what kind, and so on. Assad knows all the routes, contractors, everything. And of course, compromising material, agreements with the Russian elites, all sorts of energy and construction projects, kickbacks, bribes, and so on. So in fact, it is in Putin's interest for Assad to be silenced once and for all. Or, God forbid, for him not to fall into the hands of Western intelligence agencies. This news, I don't know, I couldn't ignore it. Trump announced that in a month he will meet with Xi Jinping to talk about soybeans. So, soybean farmers in our country are suffering because China, purely for negotiation reasons, isn't buying. We've made so much money from tariffs that we're going to use a small part of those funds to help our farmers. And then, of course, sleepy Joe Biden messed everything up as usual, blah, blah, blah. This is all for the sake of that phrase. In 4 weeks, I will meet with President Xi of China, and soybeans will be one of the main topics of discussion. Let's make soybeans and other grain crops great again. The great soybean. Let's make everything great. Trump will do it. By the way, friends, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. And together we'll make common sense great again too, so be sure to subscribe. And Greta Thunberg has turned up. The Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs published a video featuring activists, eco-activists, and all sorts of others. Just like in Japanese cartoons about various otherworldly realms, there's everyone you can imagine. Let me just explain why I'm making this comparison. So they showed Greta Thunberg, everyone is lying on the deck, and the Israeli special forces they detained them from several boats. Now they're being deported to prison. They even promised to put Greta Thunberg in a prison for terrorists, but apparently they'll just send her back. Moreover, Israel says, we stopped them very carefully, and there are still a few boats continuing to row toward Gaza, so everyone will be sent home. So why did I say there's all sorts of people there? The day before, a very serious scandal broke out. Within the community where Greta was sailing, it turned out that among the jihadists, Hamas supporters, and other such elements, there was also a communist queer militant. This is not a joke, that's how he calls himself. So then other Hamas supporters started asking, how can this be? What is his orientation? What is his gender? What's going on here? A communist queer militant? We're leaving. And they began to scatter in different directions. Well, eventually the jihadists found out, rebelled, and said, this isn't what we agreed to. But in a few hours, everyone will be sent back. Yes, Greta, there are the tankers again. They keep talking about the tankers. You're an eco-activist, Greta. Go back to your homeland and fight the tankers. At the informal EU summit in Copenhagen, they failed to agree on concrete measures against Russia, Political reports. Ursula von der Leyen was promoting the idea of creating a drone wall on the eastern border, which could track and shoot down Russian drones. However, Germany, France, and Italy opposed the idea. Macron said, I'm taking a cautious approach, and added that the solution should be more sophisticated, and Merz also expressed his disagreement. And there, they proposed to reform the voting rules in the European Union so that Orban couldn't throw a wrench in the works. But even here, do you know who is blocking this decision? Orban is the one blocking it. That is, the Prime Minister of Hungary, Viktor Orban, rejected this option. He rejected the option that would have simply gotten rid of his blackmail. Listen, do we have some kind of second organization of concerned nations popping up here? So is Russia also sitting there as a permanent member and vetoing resolutions against itself? Wait, was that even allowed? And how is it that Orban can do this? Aren't you trying to deal with him? How can one Orban block the decision of the entire European Union? Explain to me, what's the point of having such a system then? But Orban has a different opinion. By the way, the Danube slug is getting nervous. Orban said that the European Union wants to start a war. He made this statement after the summit in Copenhagen. The situation is serious. There are openly pro-war proposals on the negotiating table. They want to transfer EU funds to Ukraine. They are trying to speed up Ukraine's accession using all sorts of legal tricks. They want to finance arms deliveries. All these proposals clearly show that the Brussels crowd wants to start a war. This summit proves that in the coming months will be associated with the threat of war, Orban wrote. The war has been going on for a long time already. The war has already been going on for a long time. The fact that Orban has now become super active shows that Russia's playing its last cards, already kicking him in his sluggish backside and saying, come on, go shout that there's a war, scare people with war. Well, apparently Macron is being very cautious there. Some people are even scared. You see, now we will still observe the effect because some kept their noses to the wind, what Trump would say, what the US would say. And here's how it turns out. Intelligence data. I don't know if Donald Trump will go any further with arms transfers. Maybe so. But honestly, if I were in his place, just sitting and watching as Putin tricks him yet again and the Nobel Peace Prize slips out of his hands. There it is. That's the key for Trump. If you take down the bald jellyfish, you'll get the Nobel Prize. In every city in Ukraine, there will be a gilded statue of Trump. We'll put up a golden one in Kyiv. Now that's an argument. And you, friends, take care of yourselves, take care of your loved ones, and subscribe to this channel. And let's support our soldiers. Let's help close the fundraiser for these ground evacuators. Just a reminder, the details are in the description. Wishing us all a peaceful day. The alert continues. Glory to Ukraine!